Over the last few years, I've seen some pretty sad spaces in this city, but to be honest with you, I've never been in a place as depressing as this one, right beside the Lansdowne subway station. But all of that is about to change. My name is Carson Arthur, and on this episode of Green Force, we're going to take this neglected piece of land and transform it into a work of art.
Lansdowne Station is one of the stations that was originally constructed in the 1960s. It's one of thousands of spaces that exist within the city that have been left behind. They're orphaned, and that's why we call them orphan spaces.
I thought it was kind of derelict. I wasn't sure whose responsibility it was.
The demographics are changing, the neighborhood feeling is changing, but it still is a neighborhood that's got some real challenges. We're looking forward to a greening of that space that's aesthetically pleasing that the community can use.
I'm assuming this is the space here?
This is the space indeed.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid you were going to say that. Yeah. Well, I've seen prettier spaces in the city.
Yeah, it's not one of the most beautiful. Got asphalt, got litter strewn, it's going to be a challenge.
Those are access doors?
That's right.
For the building, I'm assuming, as well?
That's right. They need access to their property. They have the right-of-way access over this property. It's owned technically by the City of Toronto, but it's been ceded to the individual property owner to maintain.
What does the community want to see in this space?
There are people living across the street in the apartment buildings and people coming into the TTC. For the people down the street, they'd like to see a greener, a more inviting piece of property that they could use.
With all the wires and the building here and the fact that we are close to the tunnels, this is going to be a challenge, I promise, but I've got some ideas. Great. We're going to make it work. It's going to be a very interesting project.
We're looking forward to it.
I want you to see the design at this point because this is fairly early on in the concept stage, okay? So this is the actual space that we're going to be working in, okay? The Lansdowne community hasn't really had the best reputation over the last few years, but they're working so hard on trying to change that. So we're helping everybody else really take pride in the space that they live.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, we are going to put in the border here.
It's for the snow clearing and whatnot.
Exactly. Material-wise, you have a few options. We can go with a loose material like a gravel, or we can look at doing an aggregate concrete pour.
I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to have something that's going to stay put and is going to look good 3 years from now.
Okay. You'll notice that there are a lot of rocks to help create elevation changes in the space.
Okay.
But there will be some across the front because I'm trying to create that separation between the private area, which is the garden, and the public, which is the sidewalk.
Now, how are you going to prevent people from getting to the back of this garden?
The plant material itself in this space, for the most part, will be native plant material. Okay. Things like golden elder, which kind of looks like that, which has got lots of great color to it. No care, no maintenance.
Yeah.
And things like this heuchera, which, same thing, very fresh, very green.
And how about the watering?
Once they get established in the space, they really can survive on the rainfall. Okay? But specific to your question of how do we keep people out, I want to incorporate thorny plants.
I can see the thorns right here. They're nice and sharp.
The thorny plants are in strategic spaces.
That you're just not going to want to sit on them.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's the key.
What are these two circular things on the plan?
They're not real trees. They're going to be man-made. I'd like to create some really high trellis systems, and I want them to be probably, 9 to 10 to 12 feet tall.
They're not going to have the same root structure, but they're going to have the same effect.
That's kind of the plan.
Great.
On this wall here, I'm going to introduce trees graphically. Okay? I'm going to use it on an outdoor fabric.
Yep.
We're going to mount it on the front face of the wall as a huge mural.
Cool.
So it's going to feel more like an art installation versus a green space. And that's what I want this to look like.
One of the most exciting things about my job for me is when art and landscaping combine to create spaces like this. This is an art installation beside a freeway in the middle of nowhere, but it conveys a very unique perspective on behalf of the artist to all the people passing by. And because they're thinking about it, they become emotionally invested. I want people who see it to wonder what's going on there. And if I've done my job well, then everyone should be amazed.
If you can start going tomorrow, that'd be great.
We can do it.
We had some very unique challenges on this particular site, and he's found some creative ways to get around them and still produce something that I think is going to be fantastic.
Today's rip-out day at Lansdowne subway station, which means we're going to start painting the walls, and once we've got the space clear, we can start removing all the asphalt and that toxic soil underneath. While the crew's hard at work, Sean and I are going to get a chance to go through the design so that he can express any concerns. So this is the design, all right?
Beautiful.
Keep in mind this is loosely translated, it's just a concept.
Naturally.
These huge circles are not trees. Ordinarily you define the space as trees.
we're gonna do it with planters.
Okay.
Okay, and I want them to frame this wall because on the wall, as you can see here,
Right.
the 4 panels there,
Okay.
I'm envisioning photography hanging down.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna bring in trees that way.
Nice. Beautiful. What's going in the planters?
I was planning to use wisteria because I want a vine that's gonna be hardy enough to kind of take over that entire space.
Okay. What about something for when the spring is done, like a John Cabot rose?
You know what? I'm willing to try it for sure. Okay. Now this band in front here, the city wants an allowance of 12 inches and they don't want a loose material there.
There's actually a concrete factory just up the street.
All right, well, let's get the neighborhood involved. I like that. I wanted to define the space a little bit with the armor stone.
Fair enough.
I will be choosing native plant material for the entire
Beautiful.
thing, but I want them to be thorny.
Barrier plants.
Barrier plants is exactly the right term. I want to create this visually stunning, but I don't want people in this space.
Sure.
I'm going to go plant shopping.
Okay.
I leave this space to you guys. Now, even though these little shrubs aren't native, I'm still a huge fan of the Japanese mountain pieris because I've had great success with it in dry situations. I love the color of the new growth. Those are the new leaves, and they're so striking against the older established leaves which happen to be green. So basically, anywhere you put this shrub, it's going to be a showstopper. Now this is barberry. Basically, barberry is covered in hundreds of little thorns, which is perfect for keeping people out of spaces you don't want them in, which is why I'm using this plant in all the access points. It also has great color. This is absolutely stunning. So not only is it good at deterring people, it's also beautiful to look at. Now, believe it or not, this is a vine. Even though it looks like a tree, this is wisteria. This is the most aggressive vine out there, which is why it's absolutely perfect to fill out my metal planters to make it look like this is in fact a tree. The less care it gets, the more it blooms. So in a spot where it's not going to get any attention at all, it is going to do amazingly well. But we can't make it out of this metal, right?
There's nothing more industrial than rebar.
This big wall looks like a good target for graffiti.
The Green Force team is redesigning the outside of one of Toronto's busiest subway stops, Lansdowne Station. We've removed a huge slab of concrete and several loads of contaminated earth and are replacing it with tons of nutrient-rich soil and some awe-inspiring garden architecture. So basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make a trellis system for a vine, but round, as if they were trunks of trees, because I'm going to plant a vine in them, and then the vine's going to spill out over the top.
What kind of shape? Like a tapered shape or
Sort of.
some shape to it?
Do you have chalk or something? If this is looking down on top of it, so the top would kind of look like that a little bit, but then I want the channels to kind of go into a centerpiece.
Okay.
Or if you're looking at it flat, it's almost like this sort of shape, because I'm in a spot where I can't put trees, but this sort of fakes it.
Ah, once it grows in, it's going to give you that illusion of a tree.
Yeah.
What size are we talking about here, Carson?
I want these to look fairly big, so I'm thinking probably about 9 feet. And I want these to look fairly industrial. Okay, so I don't want it a finished, painted look. I want it to look fairly rough.
Normally, I'd suggest something in a tube, something in a hollow structural.
Okay.
We're going to have to take some material, and we've got to get this radius.
Okay.
So we got to play with steel. I've got a piece here that we can bend up. So let me tweak this up here on the U-bender. Again, it's just a representation. It might be pretty close.
This is the right shape. This is what I want, the arc out, but we can't make it out of this metal, right?
If it's going to be